I'm Bobo, and a fun day Saturday morning. Special guest on the air with me, and she's no stranger to anybody. Megan, how are you?
I'm great, Bobo. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I always get so much information from you in regards to planning ahead. Oh, absolutely. I got a couple of good questions for you today.
Great.
All right. So why don't you start out by giving everybody your information and contact information?
Sure. My name's Megan Conroy. I'm a partner at Blustein, Shapiro, Frank, and Barone. You can reach us by phone at 845-291-0011, or we have a great website that you can visit, and that's www.mid-hudsonlaw.com.
All right. And Megan, of course, people, when they're planning ahead, they have a lot of questions about trusts, don't they?
Yes, that is one of the hot topics. We get a lot of people that have questions about trusts, what they are, what do they do, are they right for me? So in our practice, we do use trusts quite often. We try to spend a lot of time with our clients educating them about trusts. They're not right for everybody, but they do fit in a lot of circumstances.
How would somebody know if they are right for them?
Sure. So trusts are really interesting. It's a legal document, as you can imagine, but it's a contract. And because it's a contract, it's something that the trust maker, the person creating the trust, can customize. And that's the reason that you can often find a trust is a suitable tool for many, many people, because you can really make it into whatever it is that you need. So generally, as part of an estate plan, we're using a trust to fit different needs depending on what the client's situation is. So it's definitely not one size fits all, but that's the great thing about a trust. It's completely customizable. So typically, I find that many clients at some point in their lives, maybe not initially, but at some point, they will end up considering a trust because of all the benefits that it can provide once it's customized for the client. Those benefits usually include asset protection, but often many clients are considering trusts just for the simple fact that they avoid probate, that court proceeding that we've talked about in our last couple of sessions together. So probate is something that many, many people try to avoid, and it's easy to do with a trust.
So it's completely different than a last will and testament, correct?
Absolutely. I don't like to say that a trust replaces the need for a will, because even in our trust plans, we do use a will as part of the plan. But if it's done correctly, if your estate plan is completely coordinated with your trust, we won't need to use your will. Your will only controls those assets that are outside of the trust. And in fact, even for those assets, ones that don't have beneficiaries on them and don't have joint owners. So it's just individually owned assets that are controlled by your will.
Now, when it comes down to assets, let me ask you this question. What does that exactly mean? If somebody leaves somebody a lot of money in an asset, how long does it take that individual to receive that money that's an asset?
Sure. So assets would be anything that you own. Could be a car, a house. It could be bank accounts, investment accounts. It could be tangible effects, right? Those are all our assets. And how long it takes for the asset to get to the beneficiary is going to depend on how the asset is titled during the decedent's lifetime. So if it's individually titled, meaning the asset is owned by the client and they didn't ever put a joint owner on the asset, they've never added a beneficiary, they didn't move the asset into a trust as part of their plan, when they die, that asset has to go through a court proceeding, often referred to as probate. And that court proceeding is something that can take a long time. Our counties locally, the courts move pretty quickly, but even as fast as they're moving, we typically will find that court proceeding, that probate proceeding, to take about a year from start to finish. So often we're finding that the beneficiaries are not really able to get their hands on the asset for, I'd say, about a 9-month period. So it takes a long time in an individually titled asset situation. But if the decedent put a joint owner on an asset or a beneficiary designation on the asset, or even titled the asset to a trust, which is our preference, then those assets can move to the beneficiaries a lot quicker. I would say in a matter of a few weeks in a beneficiary situation or a trust situation. Joint ownership, it actually is owned by the surviving owner automatically at the time the person passed away. So there's no delay there whatsoever.
Wow. So what if it's been like 6 months and the beneficiary hasn't received that asset?
Yeah, so my recommendation at that point would be to consult with the legal professional who might be helping with the estate, right? So usually after someone passes away, the family is going to consult with an attorney, not because they necessarily need to, although generally you will find an attorney will typically get involved, but people don't know what to do, right? This isn't something that's commonplace. It's not something that people deal with every day. So they'll contact the attorney. So usually we do have an attorney involved somewhere in the estate. And if a beneficiary feels like it's taking a longer time than they thought it would, they should contact the attorney to find out what the holdup is.
To check on the status of the asset.
Exactly, because there's a lot of factors that can go into it. So maybe a beneficiary thought they would receive the asset in no time at all, but it turns out it was a probate process, and that would explain that delay if it's been many months.
Oh, boy. Wow. Well, there's a lot of interesting things to know. That's for darn sure. Now,
oh, yeah.
and it can be pretty tricky, too, can it?
Sure. Like I said, this isn't something that people deal in every single day. As you know, I've made my practice area focus on estate planning and estate administration. And so that is the one area that I spend my time on, and it's enough to keep me very busy. I promise you that.
Well, when my brother passed, I found myself in a position with something I never had to do before because he wanted cremation. Mm-hmm. And along with that, I received papers from the funeral home, and I had to sign them giving permission for them to do the cremation.
Sure.
And that was a hard thing to do.
Yeah, you've lived it. It's a very emotional time that you are then required to take action and complete paperwork you've never dealt with before and make really tough decisions. I think that if your brother told you his wishes or put them in writing somewhere, that probably helped you tremendously because at least you didn't have to guess what he would have wanted, right? That decision wasn't weighing you down. It was more a matter of how do I accomplish what it is that he wants and how do I complete this paperwork? So we typically do find that the funeral homes, they're professionals there as well, and they will generally try to help you as best they can with that paperwork and with guiding you on making any decisions that the decedent hadn't already made. But to your point, it's a really tough time in someone's life, and the more guesswork that you can take out of it for your loved ones, the better off they'll be because there's still a lot of things that they need to do that they've never done before, like completing that paperwork and following through with cremation and things like that.
Well, the funeral home was very, very helpful to me.
Good.
They really, truly were. And I had to fill out that paperwork. They were with me every step of the way. And then I had to mail it back to them because he lived down in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. But
and I think that's something that we typically do recommend to our clients. And for any listeners out there, you can pre-plan your funeral services and whether or not you want to be buried or cremated, where you want your remains to be laid after you pass away. And so not only is it a good idea to put those plans in place, you can even go so far as to prepay for some of those items. And so I generally will recommend that the clients kind of go to some funeral homes that are nearby and get a sense of what the professionals there are like. Do they seem helpful? And that way they have a good sense of, am I dealing with a good, reputable funeral home? Is this going to be a good service that's provided to my family? And that's something that clients can do while they're alive to make it that much easier on their loved ones.
That's what my brother did. He prepaid everything for his funeral, the attorney. He did all of that. Yep. And it did make it that much easier because, believe me,
that's wonderful.
I'm the last one that wanted to sit down and make funeral plans. I just,
Right.
oh boy, that must be so hard to do with a deceased loved one. It really has to be. So
yeah, you're grieving, and now you have to make decisions. What a mess.
oh, absolutely. So that's why, if a trust is good for an individual, they can customize that trust with all that information in it, can't they?
Well, there's going to be separate documentation that's used to customize those particular kinds of provisions, but a trust is very similar in the sense that it is taking away all of the guesswork so that your beneficiaries don't have to try to figure out what you would have wanted. Instead, it's laid out in that customizable contract that we call a trust, and that trust is going to describe who's going to be the one to carry out your wishes. That position is known as the trustee. And the nice thing about a trust is that it takes effect while you're alive. So it also covers disability. If you were unable to manage your own affairs, right, you start to decline mentally, and you're not really able to get out to the bank and pay your bills and make those kinds of financial decisions that you used to be able to make for yourself, in your trust instrument, you can designate a trustee, a person that you trust enough to carry out those daily tasks for you when there comes a time that you couldn't do it for yourself. So that, in that situation, that makes a trust different than a will, because a will only takes effect upon your death. So the will is only going to control distribution of assets after you pass away. The trust has the added benefit of controlling assets during your incapacity, and then it also distributes assets after you pass away. So it does both jobs.
Wow. Is there ever any way where the individual that's mentioned to inherit the asset not get it at all?
Sure. I mean, I suppose there are estate plans that fail, and so even the best laid plans, right? So in a failing estate plan, it means that maybe the paperwork itself said, I want this asset to go to this particular beneficiary, but for whatever reason, the asset itself was not coordinated with that plan, with that written paperwork, and now the asset doesn't pass to the intended beneficiary. A good example of this, actually, is where we have someone who relies on a will-based plan. Their will says, I'll pretend this is my will, right? Maybe my will says, I want everything I have to go to my husband, okay? And I set up that will. I have lots of custom provisions in it. It looks wonderful. It's the best will you've ever seen. Everything's going to go to my husband. However, I, silly me, forgot to change the beneficiary designations on some of my assets. So let's say I have an old life insurance policy. I took it out long ago before I was married, and I designated my brother as the beneficiary on the life insurance. And then I never updated it. I never changed it. So now when I pass away, even though my will says I want everything to go to my husband, including that life insurance policy, because the life insurance policy had my brother as the beneficiary, that's going to supersede the wishes in my will. And that policy will be distributed to my brother, not to my husband.
Oh, wow. So it's very, very important, especially with a last will and testament. And I've said this many times over. It's not a good thing to sit back in your recliner and think, I'm all taken care of, because things do change with families, with wives, husbands, brothers, sisters. And if you don't update that, then that's going to create a big problem, because you don't want that to happen.
That's exactly it. So what we consider a comprehensive estate plan is not only having all of the legal documents in place, right? The will, there's also powers of attorney and healthcare documents you should have in place. But you also need to make sure that your assets are properly connected with your wishes, with the planning strategy. And that means seeing how the assets are titled. Are they titled individually? Maybe that's good. Maybe we need to change it. Do they have a joint owner on the asset? Again, maybe that's something that's coordinated with the plan, or it's not, and we need to make a change to that. And then finally, check on our beneficiary designations. This happens all the time, which is why I use that life insurance as an example. I have a lot of people that have policies that they took out when they were very young or even were given to them by their parents. Their parents took them out on their lives when they were just babies, right? Those like old Gerber policies and things like that. And over the years, they're sort of forgotten. They're set off to the side. The premiums are all paid up, and no one checks on the beneficiaries. And so those old stagnant beneficiaries may not be consistent with the person's current estate planning wishes. Had many instances where clients that are older and starting to consider, sort of end-of-life provisions, they check on their life insurance and they say, my goodness, my parents are still listed and my parents have been gone for decades, and I never considered that I need to update this policy. So those are the things that make or break an estate plan, right? The success of your plan is going to depend actually on how the assets are titled. The legal documents are important too, but the title of assets, that's going to be the key factor.
Oh, brother. I mean, that would that would be a real mess. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, and I think we mentioned this when we spoke previously, but maintaining that plan, checking in on it every year or so is a good idea, considering what assets you have. Do I have the right beneficiaries on these assets? Just generally reviewing your plan on an annual basis is a really good idea. And then if you think that you're not sure how your beneficiaries are designated or you may want to make some changes, then that's the time to go in and update that plan. Should be adjusting as your life changes. So
you're saying at least once a year to have a review on your plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. In our office, we actually do offer a formal maintenance program. So we encourage our clients to come in every year, sit with us, we chat, we kind of catch up a little bit on each other's lives, but then we dive into the planning documents. We make sure that the legal paperwork is still consistent with their wishes, and then we also make sure that the assets are properly connected with that legal paperwork.
Sure.
But for people that don't want to participate in a regular maintenance program, they don't have to come in and see me every year, right? And so those people should at least think about the plan each year, even without visiting with the attorney. Just review it mentally or pull out the paperwork and kind of go over it. If it looks okay, you can put it away. But I'd say at least every 5 years, probably go in to visit with an attorney to see what new paperwork is going to be required.
Boy, things could become extremely complicated if you don't do something like that, that's for sure. Megan, give out your contact information again, please.
Sure. So a good phone number for me is going to be 845-291-0011. And then, like I said before, we have a really good website. It's www.mid-hudsonlaw.com. And on that website, you can find my contact information. You can also find all of our free workshops that we host, and they're available to the public.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if you had one coming up very shortly.
Well, I did just host one earlier in this month. So our next one is going to be planned for June, and then we have one in August. So June 24th, and then we have one August 6th. Those both start at 3 o'clock, and you'll spend about 2 hours with me.
Oh, wow. And, of course, that's free of charge, but they do need to make reservations, correct?
Yes, please make reservations. This last workshop, as wonderful as it was, we had so many sign-ups that I could barely fit everyone in the room.
Oh,
so
brother.
Please get in early, sign up with us. You can sign up right through our website or give us a call, and that will get you on the list. Yeah,
seating is very limited, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah, wow. Megan, I think you're absolutely wonderful. I really do. You're an excellent attorney and partner with your firm there. And
Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. And I would highly recommend you to anybody. I really, truly would. And that's why we have you on this show with Planning Ahead. Now, the interesting part is the trust. Like you said, it's not for everybody. And why would that be? It's not for everybody, Megan.
Sure. So there's certain situations where the same planning objectives can be accomplished through other means. Like I mentioned earlier, most of our clients do end up using a trust at some point in their lives. Trusts give you a better guarantee of the success of your plan because everything's kind of encompassed in one document. We can lay out all of the disability provisions, the after-death provisions, and then once the assets are properly connected to your trust, you kind of can go on like an autopilot, right? Just check in every year to make sure it still says what you want it to say. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot of ongoing maintenance that you need to do to make sure that that plan survives. Other forms of estate plans, there are things that you need to keep on top of and making sure that assets are titled correctly and things of that nature. So most people end up with a trust either early on in their lives because they know that's what they want and they know about its benefits, or at some point later in their lives because they're seeking more of an asset protection structure. But not everyone has to go with a trust plan. If you decide not to use a trust or it's not recommended to use a trust, we just want to make sure that your will, for instance, says what it should say and that your assets are properly coordinated with those intentions.
And, you know, people really don't want to think about this stuff. I find that to be very, very true. You know, they sit there and it's the last thing on their mind with trying to plan ahead. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely. No one wants to think about their own mortality or their passing, but I think that once they realize it's really important to have a plan in place, for the client themselves, but also for their own family members so that their family has an easier time after they eventually pass away. So doing it for yourself, but also for your loved ones. Once they come to terms with that, then I think taking that initial step to get their first plan in place, that's going to be the hardest step. After you have your plan in place, it becomes something that is a lot easier to deal with, to maintain. Maybe you take it on almost like a responsibility, right? I know I have to go get my checkup every year. I don't love having to do that, but I do it because it's a good idea. I go to the dentist, I get my eyes checked out, and I should also review my estate plan. So it becomes sort of part of the normal life, the tasks that we don't love having to do as adults, but we do them anyway because it's important. It offers some benefit.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Megan. Mine's very, very easy. Very, very easy. If I pass away before my wife, everything, the contents of the house itself, everything gets left to her. And it's as simple as that. So that's my plan.
That's a perfect plan. So the things that I would want to tell someone who sits with me and says, my plan is very easy, right? I have one beneficiary. It's my spouse. I want everything to go to them. We want to make sure that your assets are titled in a way to make sure that everything goes to your spouse in the quickest, easiest way possible, right? So we're going to look at how assets are titled. Are they jointly titled? Are there beneficiaries? Is there any potential problem with using that structure to pass assets to your wife? Some of the things that people become concerned about a little bit later in life is, sure, that part's easy, right? Everything should go to my spouse. But what happens if my spouse needs some level of long-term care, right? What if they end up in a nursing home? Yeah. Am I worried about all of the assets being used to pay for the nursing home? Do we want to create a structure that allows us to protect and preserve those assets for other beneficiaries? So while your situation may be very simple, people that have a similar situation might have some other considerations, like asset protection.
Yeah, that's really a good thought, too, because my wife has had several strokes. She can hardly walk. And the other thing is she had 2 back-to-back heart surgeries, too, as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I worry about that because I take care of the washing of clothes, dishes. I do food shopping. I also take care of her in many, many different ways. I get up in the middle of the night to see if there's anything that she needs, all kinds of things. And she does have special needs that have to be purchased, along with heavy-duty medications, too.
I'm sure, which I'm sure are very expensive.
Oh, boy. I'll tell you, I'm sure glad we have the insurance that we have. $57,000 hospital bill. and we only ended up paying $1,600.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
So it is. Yeah.
That's something that, sometimes people complain about insurance and kind of the industry as a whole. But when you have something like your situation and you can see how much money you didn't have to pay thanks to the insurance policy that you have, and It sounds like a very good one, you can appreciate it on a different level.
It really is. That's one thing that both of us agreed upon, was to have very, very good health care policies. I'll tell you that right now.
Very important.
It really, truly is. But now, if something was to happen to me, heaven forbid, she would definitely have to have a health care provider in here to assist her.
Sure.
She definitely would, and that could be very expensive.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the cost of different kinds of healthcare services can be exorbitant, right? And depending on what an individual's needs are. So it sounds like your wife's needs are great. She has a lot of things that you already assist with and that she may not be able to do on her own if you weren't around. And so the cost to have a healthcare provider come into your home to assist with her might be several $1,000s every month.
Oh, sure.
And depending on how many hours a day you need them to be with her, especially if you weren't around, right, that cost is only going to increase. So for clients who do have loved ones who have a current need for care, or even just sort of planning for the future, for clients who can't anticipate at the moment that someone's going to need care, but everyone gets older, everyone has some health concerns at some point in their life.
Yep.
So if that circumstance was going to occur, we want to have some proper estate planning in place to make sure that the care that person needs can be provided in a way that's least expensive to the individual. And that can be something that's incorporated right in your estate planning document.
Well, I'll tell you another thing that we don't have to worry about either, and that would be a grave site, because my wife has that and she owns it.
Oh, good. Yeah, so that goes back to our pre-planning for things like burial and cremation.
Yes.
You can own a plot, and that's wonderful that you already have that set up.
Yep, we do. We absolutely do. Megan, one more time, dear, your contact information, please.
Yes, the phone number for us is 845-291-0011, and then we have a good website, www.mid-hudsonlaw.com.
Right, and you have workshops coming up, too, that are free and open to the public, but they need to make reservations. And is that up on your website?
Yes, those workshops are up on the website. On our main landing page, you'll see free workshops. And then as you scroll through the list, you're going to see the ones that are available. The next one coming up is going to be on June 24th at 3 p.m.
Wow, graduation time.
Yeah.
That's for darn sure. Megan, again, I want to thank you so much for your valuable time and the information that you have given the listeners right here on Fox Oldies 98.9. Seriously, I don't know what we would do without you, and your information is absolutely awesome.
Thanks, Bobo. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I hope, I know we're going to be talking again soon, but I hope your spring is very, very enjoyable. I hope the weather gets a lot warmer, to be honest with you, and it's time to start up those lawnmowers pretty soon.
That's right.
Megan, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.